I've never been more confident that we were going to have $1 million Bitcoin. We are moving from that gradually phase into a more suddenly phase. You know, the markets can smell that what's going to happen is in 8 months we're going to have a lot of easy money. Bank lending will, surge, M2 will grow, homes will be refinanced, and we will have inflation.
Hello, Luke Broyles here, along with my friend Larry Lawrence Lepard. Thanks, Larry, for joining me today.
Great to be with you, Luke. I always enjoy it.
We are in a beautiful spot here. We are at Lake Winnipesaukee here in New Hampshire. It's absolutely gorgeous. We're here at Camp Nakamoto 2025. We got about 130 wonderful Bitcoiner guests. We got kids, we got parents, we got people bringing their parents, we got parents bringing their kids, lots of wonderful people, lots of excellent speakers, just like Larry here. And when we had a brief moment just to relax a little bit, we wanted to talk about macro stuff because I know that's what everybody wants to know about. We're going to talk about the Fed governor, we're going to talk about gold and everything else. So without further ado, you want to have a seat in the sun?
Yeah, let's do it.
This is the moment for you and your family to secure your spot at the Bitcoin Private Island Retreat of Camp Nakamoto upcoming here in 2026. This is the perfect Father's Day weekend getaway for you and your family to be able to relax, unwind, and make new friends. This is a private island retreat for Bitcoiners and their families with all kinds of family-friendly outdoor activities, water activities. There are going to be Bitcoin panels inside, and every evening there's a party available for everybody of all ages. You'll be able to network with some of your most recognizable Bitcoin voices and create lifelong memories with like-minded individuals that will last for years and years to come. You're able to bring spouses, parents, kids, or anybody in your life that you would like to introduce to Bitcoin without the topic being overwhelming or overstimulating for them. For less than half of the cost of other Bitcoin conferences, you'll actually be able to relax, spend time outdoors instead of in a hotel, and you'll get to be spending more one-on-one time with speakers. And at the end of the day, you'll be leaving this event with more connections than you could even imagine. With a fixed hard cap of cabins available, this is the moment you should secure your spot before they all get reserved. For the best savings, use code LukeBTC for 15% off of you and your entire family's order. I look forward to seeing you there.
Where you live, you're on the Union Lake, right?
Not really. No, I'm in western Boston suburbs. But that's only half the year. I've kind of converted into being a snowbird now, so I'm in Florida.
Yep.
The wintertime, so.
Hopping back and forth.
Yeah, I go back and forth. Yeah.
Well, my first time to Boston was a few years ago for a Bitcoin event, and one of the things that really stood out to me in Boston, and I don't know if I've told you this before, but I went to the Tea Party Museum.
Oh yeah, it's cool, isn't
it? Yeah. It's a wonderful place. It really impacted me actually, and it's very fascinating to me how literally catty corner to where the where the revolutionaries dumped the tea in the harbor is now the Federal Reserve Building.
Yes.
Like literally the shadow of the Federal Reserve.
Yes. Yeah. It's 100 yards. Yeah.
Yes, it's 100 yards. I found that extremely poetic in the worst sense.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah, they kind of a slap in the face of the guys who didn't want to have that sort of thing happen. Yeah.
Right, for sure.
There's a lot of history in Boston. I mean, the meeting house, the Old South Meeting House, and where the massacre took place.
Yeah.
I used to work right across the street from that.
So let's talk about the Fed since we're talking about that. So we have the new Fed governor.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on the governor specifically, and of course, second order, third order impacts in the larger direction that you think the Federal Reserve is going to be going in the coming years and decades.
Yeah,
to this massive problem.
And this will tie in nicely with what's going on in the gold price, because as we all know, gold's going up relentlessly every day. It's just taken out 4,000. A year ago it was at 2,600, a little over a year ago. But to the Fed, I mean, a couple things I think of note that have happened in the last 6 months to a year. First of all, Trump won the election, and then pretty quickly thereafter, Trump appointed Scott Bessent as Treasury Secretary, and decided to kind of go on a very active campaign of criticizing the Fed, saying that interest rates are too high, right? And the reason he's saying that is he knows that with the debt burden we've got and the credit-based system we've got, they've got to grow GDP faster than they grow debt, or else the debt trap gets worse and worse. And the only way to do that is to cut interest rates to stimulate growth. And it'll be inflationary growth, but it'll be growth. So that's all kind of a prelude. And he's gone to unprecedented steps to criticize Jay Powell. I mean, he said things like, he's a moron, and he's called him too late Powell, and he's really, been very aggressive in his attacks on him. And then some other things happened surrounding the Fed that were pretty interesting too. So They figured out, Bill Pulte figured out that one of the Fed governors had cheated on her mortgage apps, and and so Trump fired her. And whether he's got the right to do that or not is unclear. They can be fired for cause. It's unclear what constitutes cause, and it's in front of the Supreme Court right now. So that's step one. Step two, another Fed governor resigned, Coxlada, and left an open slot. And that was very, very interesting thing. It kind of happened not that long ago, and and Trump decided to pick to make the chief of his Council of Economic Advisors, Stephen Moran, Fed chair, and so he quickly appointed him to the Fed, and it got confirmed. And he was actually at the last meeting. We'll talk about that in a second. But Moran is an interesting character because he's the guy who wrote a big paper that is being referred to kind of as quote unquote the Mar-a-Lago Accord for where Trump's house is. And the notion would be that we need a weaker dollar, we need to renegotiate our debts, we need high tariffs, and we need kind of an entirely different economic system to get out from under this debt burden that we're on. And he's not wrong about any of those things. Whether or not those things he's proposed will solve it fully, I'm skeptical, but they are steps in the right direction. So anyway, Moran goes on the Fed board, and then the first Fed meeting comes, and that was a few weeks ago in September, and Powell has started to pivot. For the first time since before the election, he dropped rates 25 basis points, but Moran dissented and said he wanted to drop them 50. And both Trump and Moran have said that the Fed funds rate is way too high. In Trump's case, he said it should come down by 300 basis points. In Moran's case, I think it was 200 basis points. And, the Fed is clearly trying to the Trump administration is clearly trying to pressure the Fed to cut rates to stoke growth. Backstory to all of that, though, that's even more interesting, and partly I think it explains what's going on with gold. Fed Chair Jay Powell is a short timer now. So in May of 2026, he's out. He will no longer be Fed Chair, and he can stay on the board, but he probably won't. He'll resign from the board too. So that'll give Trump another slot that he can fill, and then then Trump will decide who he wants to be the Fed Chair. And I would actually have to say right now the leading candidate is Moran, just because he's already there, and he's been very aggressive about calling for lower rates, and Trump knows we need lower rates. And we do need lower rates. I mean, the interest expense is now running about $1.2 trillion a year. It's larger than anything except for Social Security. It contributes enormously to the budget deficit. And if rates were to go down, then interest costs would go down. So he's not wrong about that. The thing that's an issue is that when we go to lower rates, bank lending will, surge, M2 will grow, homes will be refinanced, and we will have inflation. And so, that's all kind of in our future. But I think what's going on in the markets is that the markets are sitting here and looking at the situation and saying, okay, yeah, they haven't cut rates that much yet, and Powell is still Fed Chair, but markets are forward discounting, and May's not that far away. It's 8 months or something away. So, or now less, actually, a little less than 8 months. And so as a result of that, the markets can smell that what's going to happen is in 8 months we're going to have a lot of easy money. And that's what took gold on its ride from 2,600 to 4,000 kind of relentlessly. And actually now silver has followed it, and that's a confirming trend. When gold runs and silver follows even harder, that tells you you're really in a bull market for the precious metals. And
if I may interrupt,
yeah.
why would you say that that's a symbol, or that's a sign of that?
Silver?
Historical?
Yeah, historical track records. And silver's a much smaller market. It tends to react later, but it reacts with much more force than gold. And that's every major gold bull market in the last 50 years has had a silver component to it. And frankly, this gold bull market, one of the reasons I think a lot of people did not believe this gold bull market was real, and a lot of analysts I follow were saying, well, it's at 2,600, but it's going lower, is silver hadn't moved. They're like, well, there's no silver follow through, so now silver's really moved. Silver's outperforming gold now, and that hasn't happened in a long time. And so we're in it right now, and I fully expect, I think I was saying I thought maybe gold would make 3,500, 4,000 by the end of the year. Obviously got to revise that. We already made 4,000. I don't know, maybe, I could actually see, my view is gold has actually moved very far, very quickly, And my guess is it's probably a little overextended. And, could it correct to 3,500? Oh, sure. But that's still, a couple of years ago it was 2,000. So, if it goes from 4,000 to 3,500, that's just, to me, that's a normal correction before it starts the next leg, which takes it to 5. So, if I had to place kind of a guess on calendar year 2025 ending gold price, it's probably 5,000 plus, because we are clearly in a bull market, and we are clearly going to have the monetary accommodation that I was alluding to when, Powell steps down. So that's kind of the big picture macro that's going on right now. Now, to tie that into Bitcoin, because I know, most of your listeners are Bitcoiners, not gold people, I've got a chart my partner David Foley did. It's a great chart, and it shows going back really quite some time. And what it shows is that it's the price of gold and the price of Bitcoin. Of course, Bitcoin's vastly outperformed gold. But what I found interesting in the chart, and there's several instances of it, it's not every time, but it's like 2 out of 3 times. What happens is when you have one of these monetary debasement incidents, the gold price moves first. And then Bitcoin price lags, which is kind of where we're at right now. It's kind of like a lot of Bitcoiners looking at gold saying, hey, what the hell? This thing's really moving. How come we're not moving? And then what happens is Bitcoin wakes up and just blows past it and moves much further, because to make the chart work, we actually had to use 2 different scales. And since 2020, I mean, gold is up 2 or 3x and Bitcoin's up 10x. So, or not quite 10x, but just under it. And so the point is Bitcoin moves further, faster when it gets going, but gold seems to be better at sniffing out, the next monetary event that's going to cause this sort of inflation. And I think because it's just more widely held, Bitcoin's more specialized. And so, what I see the world saying, and you're now actually seeing it. I mean, it was very interesting. Like last week or maybe the week before, J.P. Morgan came out and said, we're now observing a phenomenon that we call the monetary debasement trade. And it's expressed in terms of gold, silver, and Bitcoin prices. Because even though Bitcoin hasn't moved a lot, it made a new record not that far. A week ago it was at 126. Admittedly, it's done right now. It's gotten hammered, but that's the nature of it, right? So this monetary debasement trade, the fact that J.P. Morgan is saying it, and then Mohammed El-Arian, a big high-profile fund manager, very much part of the establishment, kind of said, hey, this is a monetary debate. And you're seeing guys like Ray Dalio saying, hey, you should have 20% of your money in gold. Bank of America, their macro analyst came out and said, we think people's gold holdings should be 20%. I mean, that's unprecedented. I mean, a year or 2 ago, everyone said gold, and they said, what are you talking about? No interest in gold. So I think what's going on, Luke, is we're moving from that gradually phase into a more suddenly phase. And, because nobody, I mean, you and I have known about the monetary debasement trade for 5 years, 10 years maybe. We've been screaming it from the rooftops. Most Bitcoiners have been screaming it from the average people they don't know, they don't care, they don't pay attention. But when you're now starting to see mainstream advisors saying, hey, there's a monetary debasement issue here, and you need an allocation to this stuff, that's big, because a lot of people listen to those mainstream advisors. And furthermore, we know it's not over yet because, there's a recent survey out that I found was fascinating. Portfolio managers throughout the United States, they asked them, what's your allocation to gold? 41% had 0, and another 25% had less than 2%. So that implies that like there's 67% of the people who manage money in this country own less than 2%. No gold or less than 2% gold. The gold market right now is about 27 trillion. U.S. stock market right now is about 67. I'm sorry. Yeah. Let me make sure I get these numbers right.
I think it's over 100, right?
Yeah.
The American stock market, over 100 trillion?
Yeah, I think it's over
130, 140 trillion?
Yeah, I think it's about 140. So,
Yep.
So the point is, and the gold stocks, which I actually traffic in, are only less than 1 trillion. It's like 800 billion. Mm-hmm. So when all these people who are, managing, and by the way, this year to date, Nasdaq's up 18%, S&P's up 12, 14, something like that. Gold stocks are up 130% this year. So it's kind of like, and people are starting to realize, hey, hang on a second. This stuff's not working as well, and this stuff over here is working better. How come, they're going to call their advisor and say, how come we don't own any of that? And the advisor can say, well, yeah, you're right. You got a good point. Well, we're not going to take everything and go over there, but we're going to reallocate to go in that direction. And my point is, we got a long way to go, right? I mean, when 60% own effectively zero amount of something, and they realize now that it's working, it's important, that could really fuel, I mean, gold to much higher prices. And I've seen lots of studies. It depends on, there are a lot of different ways you can measure what's the fair price of gold in fiat terms. But I can tell you it's been suppressed and it's been too low for a very long time now. And $10, $20, $30,000 an ounce gold is really very much within the, my model of where we could be going. So
That was going to be my question regarding that, because there's roughly $250 of assets in the world.
Right.
Gold being 27 trillion, just under 3%.
right.
If these fund managers are talking about 20% allocation,
Right.
I know you just said a $30,000 gold price. What would that be, the global percentage then? More like 15%?
Well, yeah,
of global
yeah,
assets?
yeah, I
What do you
think-
think it should be?
I don't know. I mean, none of us really know, but it should be at least 2 or 3x what it is now. I mean, right? It's 3% now. I mean, if you just took it to 10%, that would imply, and we're at $4,000 gold, that would imply $12,000 gold.
Assuming they don't print more money.
Assuming that, yeah, well, that's right,
Right.
because the denominator is getting bigger all the time, and
Right.
they will print more money.
Right.
And then, guys, I mean, the thing that I find so stunning, and why I'm just so bulled up and excited about Bitcoin, is that what's Bitcoin now? 2.3. So gold is 27, Bitcoin's 2.3
Trillion.
And, yeah, trillion. Right, and Bitcoin's going to flip gold.
Right.
So I mean, and gold's going higher. So
Yeah.
so I mean, Bitcoin. I mean, I think, I've never been more confident that we are going to have $1 million Bitcoin. And what time frame? I don't know. Maybe 5 or 6 years. Maybe 7 years. So maybe it's 2031 or 2032. But I mean, for people today who are holding Bitcoin, bought it less than 100, or even if you're buying it today at 112 or whatever it is, $1 million in 6 or 7 years. I mean, that's a life-changing move. That's almost 10x. That's a life. And by the way, it's going to go higher after that too. But forget that. I'm talking about within the realm of kind of a 6 year time, 6-7 year time window. So, look, it's all very good for this trade. And probably the hardest thing, and I know I'm encountering it, and I think other people are encountering it too, and it'll probably get harder to encounter this year. Let's say next year Bitcoin goes to 200. Well, there are going to be some people who are tempted to take profits. And just as I've got gold stocks that are up 200%. Now they were deeply undervalued. And anytime I have an investment that goes up 200%, I'm tempted to take a profit. But if I step back for a moment and look at what's going on and look at how far we have to go, how short we've traveled and how far we have to go, I think that'll be a profound mistake. There may come a time. I mean, so what makes this monetary debasement trade not work is government responsibility. I mean, right? Yeah, you laugh, and everyone I tell them laughs, and we all laugh. It's not going to fucking. But you know what? I mean, strange stuff happens all the time, right? Yeah. And so maybe someday, when they're threatened with the possibility of seriously high inflation and arguably even hyperinflation, somebody's going to step in and say, guys, we got to balance this budget. We got to get responsible. We got to cut all these military bases. We got to cut. It might happen. I mean, and if it does, then this shit's not going to go up as fast as it has. But for now, I don't see any of that happening. And I see a Federal Reserve that's about to be extremely accommodative. And so in my view, that's what gold is sniffing out. And in my view, Bitcoin's about to follow it and then some. And so, my year-end Bitcoin target is 140, 150, and I think next year we'll get to 250. So it's all coming our way. The days I have to kind of pinch myself, kind of like, geez, you've been calling this for years and years, and I can't quite believe it's coming true. But it is kind of coming true, and you got to kind of accept it. And what's stunning to me is just how long the mainstream, narrative was accepted, and that it wasn't that hard to see this, and yet nobody really saw it. Not nobody. People that weren't Bitcoiners didn't really see this, or gold people.
Right.
And we're a very small minority of the country. So,
right.
But it's coming. Yeah.
Looking at the long term, I've got a question regarding that, because I totally agree with you. I think it's fascinating. A lot of people, especially recently, have been pricing Bitcoin in terms of gold, and it's not broken out since 2021. We've been 4 years of consolidation priced in gold. And so I guess my question is...
But the trend line's intact.
Right.
You can kind of see it.
Yes,
yeah,
the trend
right?
line's going up.
And right now, if you had a trade, and I've done a little bit of this, if you had a trade to make right now, gold's at 4,000, Bitcoin's at 112, it's a pretty easy call for me right here to gold's ahead of itself, sell it. Bitcoin is lagging, buy it.
Yeah.
I mean, I would not do the opposite of that. I wouldn't sell Bitcoin to buy gold. No, because gold's just had a big move. And history says, it'll probably consolidate. But Bitcoin hasn't really caught on yet. And that chart I described by David Foley, and it's on my Twitter feed if anyone's willing to dig back a few days or weeks, kind of shows you that lag time is usually 1 to 3 months, 1 to 3 or 4 months. So gold really got going this summer. It kind of broke, actually in September, it kind of broke through a level, that it was at and really, just unrelentingly went higher.
Mm-hmm.
So add 3 months, it's kind of December.
Right.
I mean, you could jump it and do it faster. It could be November. So what I would say to Bitcoin is you just got to be patient. I mean, we've all been around this for a long time. We all know that it jumps around a lot. We all know how this works. And, I think people who are in this game are going to be extremely happy. I mean, I find it interesting on Twitter the way everybody's down on Saylor and MicroStrategy. And I'm buying MicroStrategy right here. I think it's a no-brainer. I mean, MicroStrategy is going to be a $1,000 stock, on this next run. But, because, I mean, that's the other thing. A lot of people are like, wow, Bitcoin's really kind of lagging. Look at gold, it's taken off. Bitcoin's, well, hang on, slow down. Gold's only up, 40 or 50% year to date. And if you look at the last full calendar year of Bitcoin, I want to say we're up 70 or 80. I mean,
I think technically like 90, but
okay,
like
whatever.
Like the run was like exactly a year ago, so every day it's
yeah.
going down
So
a
it's
bit, but yeah.
I mean, okay, the asset you hold went up 90% this year, and you're frustrated that it hasn't gone up more. Yeah, right.
Larry, we fell $15,000 in the last week.
Exactly.
And 3 years ago, Bitcoin was $15,000.
Exactly,
right?
and that's the point. People need to calibrate their goals and their sights, and need to understand that. And I also tell people buying it, look, somebody came to me and said, "Wow, I really want to own a lot more. I'm going to plop buy a ton of it." And I said, "Okay, fine, but just do that knowing that this could easily pull back 20 to 30%. I'm not saying it will. I don't expect it will, but it could. So maybe you buy 2/3 of what you want, and then you have the other third ready, because I think Bitcoiners kind of get defined by how they behave when the price goes down hard, the way, and you can tell if somebody's thinking correctly, because I actually root for lower prices. That means I can take more of my gold stuff and convert it into Bitcoin cheaper, right? I mean, I know longer term, higher prices are better, but other people are kind of, I think they see lower prices, they're like, well, shit, did I make a mistake? Should I sell? And of course, that's just the opposite of the way you should be thinking. You should be thinking, oh, this is a buying opportunity, I should be buying this. So it's, this is as old as the ages, this investment psychology stuff.
Right.
Right, it's been going on for a long time.
I have a question regarding Bitcoin flipping gold. There's a very, very famous video of 2012-2013 range of Tur Demeester making a presentation on when Bitcoin was $100 for context. And he was making a presentation back in 2012-2013 that, hey, if Bitcoin were to flip gold, it'd be about $300,000 a coin. Right? So, of course, gold is a lot more now than it was in 2012-2013. Right now, Bitcoin would be more like
$1 million plus.
$1.5 million or so if it flipped. And so I guess the thing that I think in my mind, and I'd love to hear your take on it, is that, okay, let's say you're right. Let's say it takes 5 or so years for Bitcoin to reach $1 million a coin. By the time it reaches there, Bitcoin, or you may need to reach $3, $4, $5 million a coin to flip gold, right? It's like yes, the Bitcoin CAGR is faster, but the gold market cap in absolute terms is so large that the fiat price barrier of Bitcoin flipping gold is like this moving target that's getting expanded upwards. I wonder if it's going to be closer to 10 million than 1 million by the time.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's a great point. I mean, and the reason that both the numbers are moving, and it's, as I said earlier, I mean, I think gold, could be 5,000 or 10,000 an ounce fairly easily. But, if they do another big print, I mean, my book's called The Big Print, but there've actually been 2 already. There was one in 08 and one in 2020. They do another one of those, they grew the money supply 40%. I mean, then the correct price for gold isn't 10 or 20,000, it's 30 or 40 or 50,000. Do you know what I mean? And I mean, and the problem is that we're dealing with this numerator, this numeraire of $1, which is so elastic and fucked up and losing value so quickly. And I've also said in a lot of pods, like, okay, great, Bitcoin's $1 million a coin. Well, tell me the price of gasoline. Tell me the price of ground beef. I mean, we might have $1 million Bitcoin, but if gas is $15 a gallon, that's different than if gas is where it is now. Mm-hmm. So I mean, it's another way of saying that they're just printing so much money so rapidly that yeah, of course it has to keep going up and up a lot to, on a purchasing power basis, stay ahead because the cost of everything's going up. If, like I say, if we have another big print, the money supply goes 40% again, gasoline is going to be $10 a gallon, and of course these things will be higher too. So, you got kind of three variables. You got, the inflation and monetary growth. You got the price of gold. You got the price of Bitcoin. But the inflation and monetary growth fuels them both, and then there'll be substitution as Bitcoin gets more widely adopted. I think another thing I should say that I think is important to understand, that people say, well, why is gold moving and Bitcoin not? And, Bitcoin really hasn't yet been embraced by central banks and by sovereigns. I'm not sure I want it to be, because I kind of would prefer all sovereigns just fail. We kind of go to a libertarian world, but as a result of it, I mean, the central banks have been relentless in their bidding for gold, because the people who run them, they're not stupid. They understand that monetary debasement is a clear and present danger to their nation's wealth, and so they're buying gold to protect themselves. And sadly, that really, other than Bukele and El Salvador, or maybe Bhutan, a few other small countries, that's not really happening yet. And there's a lot of capital in those big sovereign pools, and we need to have that start to I mean, we need to get, again, I'm not for this, but you need to get like the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve, to start actually buying coins. And I think nation state adoption, I mean, in this last round of Bitcoin run, we've now had family office adoption, retail investor adoption with the ETFs. We're having corporate adoption somewhat. I mean, we've got Saylor, we got the Bitcoin treasury companies, but there aren't many real just operating companies that have said, oh, we're going to save in Bitcoin, put Bitcoin on our balance sheet. But that's coming. And then I think the next round after that will be the nation state. Oh my God, this is a better form of money. This is clearly where we're going. If we want to stay relevant and have a means of paying back our debt, we need to own some of this stuff. I think that's coming, but we're not there yet.
Something that I know people will be very curious about, and since you just mentioned it, is the Bitcoin treasury companies.
Yeah.
I've been trying to think it through, and I'd like to hear your thought on this. But when I look at the crypto market cap, I see something that's worth $800 billion to $1 trillion, or more or less. Right now, the cryptos are backed by Bitcoin.
You mean other than Bitcoin?
Yeah. The altcoins.
Yeah.
And I look at that, and I know a lot of people right now feel like that the treasury companies are a bubble, that they're over, not sure, or just people are trying to figure out what's going on there, right? And obviously, I think both of us agree the focus is Bitcoin, not the treasury companies.
Yeah.
But when I've been looking at them, I just can't help but think about how all the treasury companies for Bitcoin are like maybe $200-300 billion, maybe.
Well, except for Saylor, yeah.
Well, including MicroStrategy.
Oh, all of them, including, yeah, right.
Yeah, like a couple $100 billion.
Yeah, he's 100, right? Yeah.
But like 80 or 90% of that market cap is Bitcoin exposure. And so I look at that, and I want to ask you, because you've been through multiple boom and bust cycles, right? The dot-com bust to 2008, you've seen these things happen. And so I just look at the Bitcoin treasury companies and I think, well, there's only, there's not even $50 billion of premium, quote unquote, between these companies. Do you think that over the next 5 years, these Bitcoin treasury companies become some bubble-esque kind of scenario? Do you think that they're not a bubble and they'll just go up in Bitcoin terms forever? What warning and what opportunity do you think people should be aware of with these?
That's great. It's great. So let's start back at kind of the first principles on Bitcoin treasury companies. I mean, a Bitcoin treasury company is nothing more than a company that decides, it's like a holding company that decides to hold Bitcoin as its primary asset. And, I mean, an ETF arguably could be a Bitcoin treasury company, but it's not, because they just hold only the amount they want. But the thing that they're unique about, and Saylor points out that they can do, is they can use that corporate structure to create leverage. And the average human being can't necessarily do that as easily or at as low a cost. And so they can sell debt or convertible debt or preferred stock or whatever. And that leverage, they take the proceeds of that and they use it to buy more Bitcoin. And if the cost of it is less than the appreciation of the Bitcoin that they're buying, their shareholder equity value goes up. It accretes. And so there is a flywheel there. It does make sense. They, like so many things, there was an early bubble when they all came out because everyone got way excited. Thought, this is, Saylor's right. This is a genius move. We all got to do this. And it really all comes down to what's the MNAV? What multiple of the underlying Bitcoin are you selling at? And I think what will happen is over some period of time, we're going to true out at an MNAV of somewhere between 1.34 and maybe 2, but very much in the same way that a bank sells at a multiple of its book value because it has the earnings power of its assets and liabilities. Bitcoin treasury companies will sell for more than just the underlying value of the Bitcoin because of this leverage that they can employ cheaply. And Saylor, with his most recent product, which arguably is kind of brilliant and also, as he says, an iPhone moment, this stretch product, is kind of just saying, look, Boomer, I'll send you a piece of preferred stock. It's very well covered by the underlying collateral that I have on my balance sheet. I'll pay you 10% a year. I'll either sell more to pay that or I'll sell Bitcoin to pay that, whatever. And where are you going to get 10% a year with this kind of a relatively low risk profile? And the answer is nowhere. And you might say, well, why would he be willing to do that? Well, he's willing to do that because he firmly believes that he'll take those proceeds and put them in Bitcoin. The Bitcoin will go up 30% a year plus. In the earlier years, more than that. In the later years, it kind of comes down to 30. And, he's paying out 10. He's earning 30, so the 20 points accrue to his shareholders. That makes sense. That all completely makes sense to me. I own MicroStrategy. I believe it's a great stock. There were a lot of copycats. There were a lot of Me Too's. One was, Metaplanet said, oh, we got access to Japan. They don't have any way to buy Bitcoin. Bingo, great. It's all good. The problem is, it went to an MNAV of, 7 or 8.
22 at one point.
Was that right? Okay. Yeah, you're right. And it's kind of like, no, the leverage doesn't add that much value, and I know people who chased it and got hurt. In turn, if you mismanage them and you don't tell the right story and maybe you've got some other things in your closet, you can trade at below your MNAV, and that makes you a takeover candidate.
We saw it with Semler Scientific.
Semler Scientific just got bought by Strive. It was accretive to both of them. Well, it was accretive to Strive because they bought, Bitcoin below the cost of the Bitcoin. And so there's, I guess my point is, I think there's a business case, an investment case, and there's a logical case for treasury companies. They can and should exist. Okay, that's point one. Point two, what should they trade at? That's unknown. That's unclear. How smart are they? How well are they going to deploy this leverage? Are they going to is it going to be fully secured so that they can get knocked out of the box in a bear market? A lot of questions there. I don't think everyone will get it right. I think some of them won't. They'll fail. I think some of them will, market lose trust in the management. They'll trade below MNAV. They'll get bought out. Think about it. If you're trading below MNAV, Saylor can come along and buy you at MNAV or a slight premium to MNAV, and since he trades at 1.7 or 8, what it did, maybe he's 1.6 now, but it's accretive to him, very accretive to him. So that'll happen, I think, as we go forward. I don't know. There were some other treasury questions that you asked. I'm not sure I've answered. What?
No, I think that was the bulk of it. I think the one other I'm especially curious about is if you think they're, the thing I wonder is that, right now there's about 160 to 200 or so
Right.
treasury companies. I bet that in the next few years there'll be literally thousands of these. And my personal expectation is that most of them won't survive. And even if most of them do survive, they won't be investable, let's say.
I agree.
True?
I tend to agree. I think there's a bandwagon effect here. Not all of them have the brilliance of Saylor in terms of management and figuring out what risks to take and what risks not to take. And there will be scale economies. The bigger you are, the more power and clout you've got to borrow cheaply, to access the market. There's just more depth and credibility in your whole story. And so if you're a little Bitcoin treasury guy, just raise your hand and say, hey, look at me too, look at me too. How are they going to attract capital? How are they going to get investors? How are they going to innovate? Unless they really got some killer idea, and there's nothing terribly proprietary about any of these ideas. So if they come up with a killer idea, Saylor will knock it off, right?
With 10 times the volume.
Yeah, exactly. So what I think ultimately, I think you're correct, that we will boil down to something about. Now Saylor, Mark Moss interviewed Saylor a week ago, and he told me that Saylor says, no, there could be hundreds and thousands of them because, somebody, first of all, you need one for every country. Okay, fair point. Saylor's not going to be operating in Portugal. There might be, whatever. Metaplanet kind of has a nice position in there, in Japan. And then he said there'll also be different ones for different kinds of securities. There'll be a debt-based one, a preferred stock-based one, a convert-based one. Okay, maybe. I tend to be where you are, which is there will be a shakeout and there'll be several really strong, well-run players that will emerge, and they will be very investable and will probably do quite well in the next cycle. But it's tough. You got to be able, just like with Bitcoin, you got to be able to wait out these cycles. everyone's bitching about MicroStrategy being down or not going anywhere. Well, do they remember that, prior to that, I mean, he gave them a 10 bagger or more? I mean, if you really got in early enough, it was, like a 100 bagger. So, they move and then they consolidate, and they move and they consolidate. And so, I think on the next move, the premium will go up probably, and that's the biggest and the best managed. It should trade at a premium to everybody else. So I think that, and by the way, just the underlying coin price going up. I mean, if the price of Bitcoin doubles tomorrow, you'd have to have serious MNAV compression to not get at least a 2x and probably more, on
in
your
fiat terms.
Yeah, in fiat terms, right. All
Yeah.
this is in fiat terms.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I in general think the Bitcoin treasury thing is a good thing. I think that there was some not shitcoinery. There was some promotional stuff done around the edges of it.
Yeah, I think there were some questionable decisions made.
Yeah, that sucked in a lot of dumb retail investors, and
Or ignorant, not necessarily dumb, but ignorant.
fair enough.
Yeah.
Who misunderstood what it really was, and how it wasn't going to the moon immediately, and so they're down on their investment, some substantially.
Yeah.
But I also think that the good ones will find a bottom and come back and go on to hit higher highs. So.
Right. So we've talked about paper Bitcoin a little
Yeah.
bit. I think it's only fair that we talk briefly about self-custody. I know we were on a panel a little bit
Sure.
earlier here at Camp Nakamoto. If you don't mind talking a little bit about
Not at all.
self-custody. We talked a little bit about IRAs. I don't know if you want to go into that, but
Yeah.
self-custody in general.
I'm not an expert on IRAs, and the guys on the panel knew more about that than I did, but let me just say in general. So it's not my base case that the government's going to come and confiscate our Bitcoin. It's just not. I think the cat's out of the bag. I think, we've had a very friendly administration to it. I think so many people own it now. I think if they did try and do that, there'd be a real outcry. But it's not a 0% probability. I mean, it's not, in a crisis with a blue administration, could they say, hey, our currency is failing, and it's failing because of things like Bitcoin and gold, and we need to grab all the Bitcoin and gold so that we can restore the strength of our currency. I mean, could that argument be made? Yeah, and a blue administration might do it. Or we need to tax all the Bitcoin and gold, and maybe we need to even tax unrealized capital gains, right? And it's like, oh shit. I mean, that would be pretty devastating or negative to our case. And so, you got to keep that in the back of your mind as one, maybe less than 10%, but it is a possibility. And so with that in mind, if you really want to have, be truly self-sovereign, be able to, if the government says, I'm going to take all your Bitcoin, or the government says, I'm going to tax you 90% on your unrealized gain on your Bitcoin, or whatever the government says regarding Bitcoin, I think you want to be able to, basically, give the government the finger and say, hey, that's nice. I'm not here anymore. And they'll say, you owe us an exit tax. How much? Well, a piece of your Bitcoin. You don't know what I have, and I'm not telling you. And, you're on a plane, you're in another country, you got your 12 words, you got your wealth. So, that's the beauty. That's why we self-custody. And it's a beautiful thing. But, it's not for everybody. I mean, it requires doing the technical work to understand the risks involved. I mean, because as you know, it's permanent. Bitcoin's permanent. If you screw it up, you lose it. So, you got to get good advisors like yourself. You got to get, listen to all the, Ben Sessions, BTC Sessions stuff. If you're not comfortable with it, you need help to truly self-custody. But it can be done. It can be done safely, and it should be done if you're worried about the government, taking the Bitcoin. I'm not highly worried about it, but I always have my eye on that issue. Right, I'm watching it. So.
And I think, if I may add, I think just as importantly, that number may change. Maybe it's 10%, maybe it's 5%, but
Right.
really quickly, that percentage could plummet down, or it could skyrocket up relatively quickly.
Correct.
With changing information.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I fully agree with you, of course. I think that people should definitely focus the vast majority of their portfolio on Bitcoin only, and in my opinion, in particular, self-custody Bitcoin.
Right.
As you know, Larry, I'm a huge fan of multi-sig, especially for those with IRAs or those that are a bit afraid with that. And I think, going back to the treasury companies, I think, in my experience, the people that have made the best decisions with the treasury companies or their, let's say, Bitcoin accretion plays have been the ones with a very solid nest egg, with the vast majority in Bitcoin, at least in my experience.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that with portfolio
Yeah,
management?
I would agree with that. I would agree with that. I think, and it's really only, and this is, so Bitcoin is like, it really always kind of stuns me, and we've seen this in a bunch of cycles now, how here we have the best performing, most asymmetric asset in the history of humankind. I mean, it's like, it's stunning, right? And yet, you get some of these young people, and I'd say that, it's not always the young, some of the older too, but I've seen kids on Twitter, and they come out on X and they say, yeah, but that's not enough. I mean, I don't want to just go up, the Bitcoin annual rate of return. I want to beat it. So, I mean, I saw some kid who sold all his Bitcoin and used it to buy Metaplanet. Well, that was right before Metaplanet shed about half its value. Now, that'll probably come back, but my point is, no, you're not doing this right.
Right.
You don't chase these levered things, and you don't need leverage in an asset with this much asymmetry. You can get really rich just owning it free and clear, solid, and just sitting there.
Right.
And waiting for 5 or 10 years to go by. You're just sitting there. That's all you got to do.
That's all you got to do. And
Yeah.
I think that's why that's one of the more intangible and often forgotten reasons of self-custody, is that the peace of mind of the self-custody helps make you better decisions with everything else that you're going to play with. And I think that helps so much, even beyond just the self-custody.
I think that's exactly right. Yeah.
Well, Larry, thanks for your time. I know that we're running up here because we got a boat to catch. We're going to do a little loop around the island with everybody here at Camp
Looking forward to
Nakamoto.
that. Yeah, it's beautiful out here.
Real quick, if you're watching this and you want to join Camp Nakamoto next year, somewhere on the screen or down below you'll see discounted tickets for next year, early bird tickets. Larry, do you have any words about what this event's meant to you?
It's a beautiful event with a lot of great people in a great setting. I've really enjoyed it. I think most of the people here have enjoyed it, so I would highly recommend it.
Thank you, Larry.
Okay.
Yeah, I appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Luke. Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the moment for you and your family to secure your spot at the Bitcoin Private Island Retreat of Camp Nakamoto, upcoming here in 2026. This is the perfect Father's Day weekend getaway for you and your family to be able to relax, unwind, and make new friends. This is a private island retreat for Bitcoiners and their families with all kinds of family-friendly outdoor activities, water activities. There are going to be Bitcoin panels inside, and every evening there's a party available for everybody of all ages. You'll be able to network with some of your most recognizable Bitcoin voices and create lifelong memories with like-minded individuals that will last for years and years to come. You're able to bring spouses, parents, kids, or anybody in your life that you would like to introduce to Bitcoin without the topic being overwhelming or overstimulating for them. For less than half of the cost of other Bitcoin conferences, you'll actually be able to relax, spend time outdoors instead of in a hotel, and you'll get to be spending more one-on-one time with speakers. And at the end of the day, you'll be leaving this event with more connections than you could even imagine. With a fixed hard cap of cabins available, this is the moment you should secure your spot before they all get reserved. For the best savings, use code LukeBTC for 15% off of you and your entire family's order. I look forward to seeing you there.